In financial markets, shocks rarely begin with numbers. They start with people, specifically people who know too much suddenly choosing to speak. And today, that's exactly what has unfolded. A high-ranking advisor, someone with a front-row seat to the most sensitive discussions inside the administration, has issued a public statement that directly contradicts the official story the government has been repeating for months. This isn't a casual disagreement or a policy critique. It's what analysts often describe as a confidence rupture, a moment when credibility breaks from the inside, not the outside. But unlike a corporate CFO distancing himself from bad accounting, this event strikes at the core of the government's functioning. For the last several years, this advisor stayed silent, even through controversies that dominated national headlines. And then, suddenly, comes a detailed, highly specific, carefully constructed public message that challenges the administration's integrity and exposes what the advisor calls deeply troubling behavior from powerful officials. To investors, to political observers, and to every citizen who wonders whether government institutions still work the way they should, this is more than a leak. It is what professionals call an authoritative signal.
Why?
Because the credibility of a message depends not just on what is said, but on who says it. This is not a disgruntled intern, a partisan critic, or an anonymous whistleblower. This is someone who had direct access to the inner machinery of government, a person whose reputation, career, and legal exposure are on the line by speaking publicly. Before continuing, I want to pause for those who approach political controversies with caution. If you're someone who values evidence, consistency, and context, and not just dramatic claims, consider subscribing. We analyze events based on what can be verified, not what fits a preferred narrative. Now, let's break down exactly why this advisor's statement is so significant. A disclosure that shifts the ground. A major part of evaluating insider claims is understanding specificity, the dates, the names, the meetings, the documents, and the decisions that can be checked against real evidence. According to journalists who received early access to the statement under embargo, the advisor describes attending meetings where strategies for derailing congressional investigations were discussed, plans for misleading oversight bodies were outlined, and government authority was allegedly used as a tool to punish political opponents. These accusations are not vague impressions or emotional complaints. They are concrete claims about what happened, when it happened, and who was in the room. The advisor reportedly points to contemporaneous notes, emails, text messages, and additional witnesses as evidence. One particularly revealing detail. The advisor acknowledges participating in some of these actions, but insists it was under pressure from superiors and accompanied by internal objections that were ignored. That admission matters because it answers the biggest question critics would raise. If this was happening, why didn't you speak out sooner? The advisor's response, according to reports, is that internal objections went nowhere. Leaving the position, they claim, would only silence a voice pushing for lawful conduct, not fix the problems. Staying allowed them to document everything. And now, with internal channels exhausted, the advisor believes the public must know. Immediate market reaction. Financial markets react fast to anything that suggests political instability. The moment this statement became public, major equity indexes dropped around 1.5%. Prediction markets rapidly adjusted to new probabilities of legal and political fallout, and global currency markets showed a slight decline in confidence toward the US dollar. However, within hours, markets partially stabilized.
Why?
Because investors concluded that while the allegations could reshape political landscapes, they were unlikely to produce immediate economic disruption. But the reputational damage to leadership, to institutions, and to public trust has now begun, and that alone carries long-term implications. Who is this advisor? Understanding credibility requires understanding the messenger. The advisor has nearly 2 decades of relevant experience, a history of service across administrations, a reputation for professionalism rather than partisanship, and no prior pattern of seeking public attention. This is not someone known for theatrics or ideological crusades. That profile strengthens their credibility, but it does not eliminate the possibility of misunderstanding or bias. Even highly experienced insiders can misread discussions, interpret decisions through personal grievances, or speak under legal pressure that influences their framing. That's why multiple layers of scrutiny will follow. What comes next? Investigations, hearings, and testimony. Congress will almost certainly request, or demand, that the advisor testify under oath. Those hearings will be extremely detailed, probing every aspect of the allegations. Law enforcement agencies, including the DOJ and possibly the FBI, will evaluate whether a criminal investigation is necessary. But complications arise if officials implicated in the advisor's account have authority over those same agencies, raising potential conflicts of interest. Other insiders will be pressed for statements. Some will corroborate. Others will contradict. Many may remain silent to avoid legal exposure. And each of these reactions will shape public understanding of what is true. Officials named in the allegations will likely issue strong denials, framing the advisor as mistaken, disgruntled, or misinformed. They will argue that supposedly unlawful actions were actually legitimate exercises of authority. This conflict between competing narratives will define the coming months. The media's role: confirmation or contradiction. Journalists will seek the advisor's notes, referenced emails, other participant testimony, timelines, documents, and independent verification. Media investigations often determine whether an insider's claims gain momentum or collapse. And given the seriousness of these allegations, newsrooms will devote significant resources to uncovering the truth. Why this moment matters to citizens. Behind the political drama lies a simple question. Can people inside government speak up about misconduct without being destroyed by retaliation? Healthy democracies rely on protections for insiders who raise concerns. But these same protections can be misused by individuals seeking personal gain or revenge. So each case requires a careful balance between accountability and skepticism. The advisor's statement will now move through multiple layers of scrutiny: congressional oversight, law enforcement review, media investigation, and public judgment. And that process takes time. Jumping to conclusions, either believing everything instantly or dismissing it all as an attack, serves no one. The bigger picture. Whether the advisor is ultimately validated or discredited, this moment has already triggered a series of events that will reshape political discourse, institutional trust, and possibly even future elections. The coming months will test whether accountability systems still function when allegations reach the highest levels of power, or whether polarization prevents serious misconduct from producing consequences.